Satan loves religious people. Satan isn't shocked if you go to church services. He isn't upset if you go to prayer meetings and if you go to Bible studies and if you get involved in all kinds of religious activities and you become part of the whole religious scene here in America. Satan isn't opposed to that because he actually can use that to confuse the whole issue of what is true and untrue and what is God and not God. Satan doesn't oppose religious practices. He doesn't oppose those of us who get involved in all kinds of religious activities and religious jargon and religious shibboleths. What he hates and what he's determined to destroy is the Word becoming flesh. So as long as you go to church, and as long as you act religious, and as long as you keep that to Sundays, and don't let it get into your life, into your everyday behavior life, you won't have any trouble from Satan, and you won't have any opposition from him. And it's interesting, Satan actually doesn't oppose your good intentions. He won't try to destroy you if you keep your religion in the realm of thoughts and intentions and good plans. Now, I'll show you an example of that you know yourself. Mark 10 it is, and verse 17. Mark 10 and verse 17. It's page 878. 878. Mark 10 and 17. And as he was setting out on his journey, a man ran up and knelt before him and asked him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone. You know the commandments. Do not kill. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. Do not defraud. Honor your father and your mother." And he said to him, "Teacher, all these I have observed from my youth." And Jesus, looking upon him, loved him and said to him, "You lack one thing. Go, sell what you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come, follow me." At that saying, his countenance fell, and he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. So you can have good intentions, and you can actually do lots of things that are good, except the one thing that means that the Word would become flesh in your life. The one place where God's will is not being done by you in your everyday detail life. And if you don't allow the Word to become flesh there, Satan will give you no trouble with all kinds of other religious ideas and religious intentions. It's very interesting, but if you notice, there wasn't tremendous opposition even to Isaiah's birth, or Jeremiah's, or Micah, or Amos. They all preached the forgiveness of sins. Satan isn't very opposed to the idea of forgiveness of sins. That's why Christendom in so many parts of our nation prospers, because forgiveness of sins is very popular, but it emphasizes just, I'm going to get to heaven. I'm not going to hell, I'm going to get to heaven. But it doesn't do much in regard to dislodging Satan's position of princedom in this present world. And that's the only thing Satan is concerned about. Satan is not concerned with Jesus saying, "I believe God could heal sickness." Satan isn't concerned with that. He doesn't care if we all believe God can heal sickness. But he is desperately opposed and vehemently hostile to a man like Jesus who comes to a paralytic and says, "Get up, take up your bed and walk." That is the Word become flesh. And Satan is opposed to that. Satan is not opposed to you thinking, "I should say something about the attitude in our office to language." The language is miserable. It is dirty and filthy. I should say something about it. I should. I've been in this office for several years. I should speak out. Satan isn't concerned about you. He won't oppose you at all. He'll let you carry on with those good intentions and those good desires and those good beliefs for years, as long as you never actually speak out. But the moment the Word becomes flesh in your life, you will face the same things as the baby Jesus faced. Because the moment you do that, the baby Jesus is beginning to be born in your life. Satan isn't concerned with Jesus saying, I believe God could raise the dead. He isn't concerned with that. He isn't troubled if you say, I believe Jesus could raise the dead. He isn't concerned with you saying, well, I believe God could heal Susan. I believe that. He isn't concerned with you saying, well, I believe if I did give my tithe to God, He probably would sort out my finances and I must do that sometime. God isn't in your life. He isn't become flesh in you as long as you say those things. What Satan is opposed to is when Jesus goes to the tomb of Lazarus and says, come forth, Lazarus. He expresses in his words and with his actions what he believes God's will is for his life. That is the Word become flesh, and Satan opposes that. Loved ones, in years to come, maybe I'll be able to explain to you in greater detail why we've gone through some of the things that we've gone through. But some of it can be very plainly explained by this Christmas story. While you and I want to gather in this sanctuary and sing hymns and pray nice prayers and generally uplift each other and encourage each other, but do not practice victory over sin in our own lives. In other words, while we talk about the homosexuals, and while we talk about the drunkenness, and while we talk about the dishonesty, and while we share with each other all our desires to be better, and don't come into victory over sin in our own lives, Satan will not bother us at all. But once you begin to preach and share and live victory over sin, the powers of hell itself converge on such a little body of people. While you keep your religion in here, while we all meet together here and have a good religious time on a Sunday, and do not practice it Monday through Friday, while we take the attitude business is dirty, it should stay over there, and we'll keep our nice clean religion over here, and we get into business, we'll operate the way the rest do, while we do that, Satan will not oppose. But when you begin to practice Monday through Friday, at your place of business or at your place of work, what God's will is for you, the powers of hell begin to move against you. Once you join the secular with the sacred, once the Word becomes flesh, once the Spirit joins with an ordinary human life in flesh and blood, the powers of Satan descend upon that group. Now, if you add to that you're dumb enough to try to obey the Great Commission to go and preach the gospel to all nations, and instead of deciding to stay in America and let the rest take care of themselves, and you're determined to go out and obey the Great Commission, all of Satan's fury is let loose upon you. And that's part of what we're experiencing, and we need to just face it. When the Word becomes flesh, the powers of hell move to destroy the infant Jesus. Why? Because that's the real coming to being of Jesus in you. Loved ones, it isn't Jesus coming to being in you when you have good intentions or good desires or good hopes or all kinds of religious activities. That isn't Jesus coming to being in you. Jesus coming into existence in you is when your actions and your words and your thoughts actually express what God's will is for your life. Talk about having done with fornication till you're blue in the face. Talk about giving up adultery for years. Talk about wanting to do something for God. Satan laughs. Big deal? Big deal. That doesn't scare me. But if you want to stop fornicating, if you want to stop committing adultery, if you want to start giving yourself to God in reality, if you want to start acting in your everyday life the will of God for you, then Satan begins to converge, because he knows the baby Jesus is being born in you. He's coming to existence in you. Now that's what happened, loved ones, back in the Christmas story, if you look at it. When Jesus was born, mighty forces began to converge upon the stable. First, if you look at Matthew, that lesson that Gentry read, Matthew chapter